It all began with a rumor that froze the entire internet, whispers of a small plane crash, and one famous YouTuber's name kept surfacing: Drew Binsky. Fans frantically searched for updates, hoping it wasn't true. Drew Binsky, known for traveling to every corner of the world, had suddenly gone silent. Some say it was just a scary coincidence. Others say they saw reports of his last trip before the crash, deep in a remote region with treacherous skies. As the story unfolds, we'll explore the heartbreaking details and what Drew's life was like just before this mysterious tragedy. Have you ever wondered what happens when someone who seems to have it all suddenly disappears from your screen? Drew Binsky is one of the most recognizable travel vloggers on YouTube. He's traveled to every corner of the world, documenting cultures, foods, and people in a way that feels incredibly personal. But recently, rumors started swirling about a small plane crash. Some people close to him hinted that something terrible happened after one of his trips. Details remain fuzzy. Was he actually involved in that crash? Is this why his channel went dark for weeks? Even more eerie is the cryptic Instagram story that disappeared after just a few minutes. A blurred image of an emergency response team and the words, "Pray for Drew." Many have been wondering ever since, what's going on? This is where it gets strange. Drew built his career on sharing every detail of his journeys with millions of followers, so his sudden silence was alarming. Could the tragedy involve him directly? Or someone close to him? Or is this all an elaborate misunderstanding fueled by social media? What we do know is that something happened that shattered the world as he knew it. And as we dive deeper into this heartbreaking story, you'll see that even someone as positive and strong as Drew was not immune to the unexpected twists that life throws at you. Stick around, because what we're going to uncover next will change the way you look at him forever. Long before the rumors and the crash, Drew was just an ordinary guy with an extraordinary passion for travel. Born and raised in Arizona, he was captivated by maps and globes as a kid. So much so that by his 20s, he'd already visited dozens of countries, backpacking his way across Europe, Asia, and Africa, with a camera in one hand and a passport in the other. Every new destination fed his soul in a way that nothing else could. But what most people don't realize is that Drew's early travels weren't always glamorous. There were times he was so broke that he slept on strangers' floors or hitched rides in unfamiliar towns just to make ends meet. That hunger for authentic experience shaped him into someone who would rather live simply and fully than chase fame. His videos, even before going viral, reflected a raw honesty that drew people in. Every week, audiences would eagerly wait for his next story, not just to see a beautiful landscape, but to see the world through his eyes. That authenticity was like a secret sauce, the very thing that kept them coming back for more. But this innocent hunger for exploration was also what set the stage for the dizzying rise that would eventually expose him to both unimaginable opportunities and devastating personal risks. By his late 20s, Drew had amassed millions of followers across YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Brands were knocking on his door, mainstream media was labeling him the guy who can go anywhere, and fans couldn't wait to see what country or challenge he would tackle next. His style was different, less scripted, more heartfelt, like you were traveling alongside a close friend. Every video ended with a wink and a "see you next time," and viewers felt like they were part of something bigger than themselves. This is precisely what triggered his meteoric rise. But as his fame increased, so did the pressure. Imagine the stress of documenting every personal thought and emotion on camera, day after day. Imagine knowing millions were watching your every move, analyzing every word, expecting you to up the ante in every video. Drew embraced that challenge at first, fueled by the dopamine hits of likes, shares, and glowing comments. What he couldn't have known was that this very fame would lead him toward the most heartbreaking chapter of his life. And as you'll discover next, it would take just one unpredictable event, one that happened far from home, to put everything into question. There were subtle signs that something was wrong long before the public caught on. Drew began mentioning exhaustion in his videos, sometimes laughing it off, sometimes sounding truly drained. In one of his last uploads before the incident, you can catch a brief clip where his hands tremble as he holds the camera. Fans flooded the comments with questions, and conspiracy threads started popping up. Was this just stress, or was he sick? Was someone pushing him too hard behind the scenes? Close friends later hinted that Drew had confided fears about burning out and feeling trapped by his own success. But none of that stopped him from hopping onto the next plane to chase his next big story. That next trip might have been one too many. Even as his team urged him to slow down, Drew kept going, driven by an inner fire that refused to flicker. And it was in this restless state that he boarded the small aircraft that everyone is still talking about today. What happened after takeoff is one of the most heartbreaking mysteries of this saga, and you're about to hear a chilling account that will make you see Drew's journey in a completely new light. When reports of a small plane going down in a remote region hit the news, most people skimmed past it until someone connected the dots. A social media post went viral, suggesting that Drew might have been one of the passengers. Overnight, his absence from all platforms became deafening. The clip of him boarding that plane, laughing, carefree, promising followers, "The next video will blow your minds," was replayed millions of times. Silence. No updates. No reassurances. Just a blank feed and worried comments that grew by the hour. Rumors snowballed. Some claimed they had seen Drew at a hospital. Others insisted he was safe and just taking a break. But one unverified video shot by a local, showing a crash site deep in the forest, gave everyone chills. A helicopter hovering overhead, medics rushing in, and someone being stretchered into an ambulance. The face was too blurred to recognize. Could it have been Drew? This is the moment when reality set in for his followers, that the adventurer they thought they knew might never come back the same. With no official statement, the internet went into overdrive. Fans created hashtags like #FindDrew and flooded every corner of social media with theories. Some believed he had survived but was clinging to life in serious condition at an undisclosed hospital. Others thought he had chosen to vanish entirely to escape the overwhelming pressure of fame. Even mainstream media picked up the story as public interest skyrocketed. The heartbreaking part was that most people felt powerless, scouring for scraps of news and fleeting updates from so-called insiders. Every blurry photo, every vague tweet, every unconfirmed tip was dissected and passed around like treasure, but none of it could give anyone a sense of closure. Drew's parents kept silent, fueling even more speculation. Without their voice to clear the air or offer a sense of direction, rumors ran wild. Late-night talk shows made passing jokes, while true crime channels began crafting elaborate videos around Drew's past, combing through every detail to try to find some hidden clue. Influencers jumped into live streams just to say they didn't know what was going on. Fans even started organizing candlelight vigils outside his favorite coffee shop and the small apartment where he'd last been seen. And then came the most heartbreaking twist of all. It was during this chaotic period that someone leaked screenshots of Drew's final text messages. The haunting words suggested he'd been feeling unsafe, uncertain, and profoundly alone. Lines like, "I don't know who to trust anymore," and "I just want it to stop," painted a portrait of someone carrying a crushing burden in silence. Overnight, the internet, which had once celebrated him as an unstoppable force of positivity and creativity, was consumed with worry and fear. Even those who had never followed him before felt a strange ache for a person they had never even met. But amid all this noise, the hashtags, the think pieces, the speculation, one clear pattern began to emerge. Drew had been carrying more on his shoulders than anyone had ever realized. The pressure to always appear happy, to always perform, had left him isolated behind a carefully constructed image. The very people who looked up to him had no idea that behind his smile was an undercurrent of pain. And as you'll see next, the real tragedy lies not just in what happened on that fateful day, but in what was left unsaid for so long. It's a reminder that someone can seem perfectly fine on the surface, yet be quietly breaking apart beneath it all, and that sometimes, by the time we see the signs, it's already too late. In the weeks that followed, close friends began to speak up, carefully, often anonymously, about the intense pressure Drew had been under. They spoke of long nights spent editing and sleepless early mornings spent plotting back-to-back trips across the world, all with one single goal: keeping up with an impossible schedule. Many of them revealed that managers had been pushing him to do more, to take every trip, to attempt every challenge, to say yes to every new sponsor, expecting even bigger, wilder stunts. The weight of those expectations created a cycle that never stopped spinning. More and more details began to surface. The constant buzzing of his phone at 2 a.m. with questions about deadlines and deliverables, the flights booked without his consent, the growing sense that if he paused, even for a breath, someone would take his place. It became painfully clear that Drew was battling an invisible war behind the camera. Despite his sunny persona and infectious smile, close friends shared that he'd hinted at his struggles in small, often overlooked ways. A tired glance that lingered too long, a sigh mid-vlog as he forced himself to continue filming, or a quiet comment tucked into a video about needing just one real day off. These tiny cracks in his polished public image were so easy for most to miss, until they weren't. The most heartbreaking part? Drew had built a vast and loyal community, one that would have supported him if only they'd truly known what was going on. Fans had been captivated by his energy and charisma for years, and they would have rallied around him had he given them the chance. But caught up in the chase for the next viral clip, for the next awe-inspiring stunt, Drew rarely paused long enough to say, "I need help." Every time he thought about stepping back, some part of him told him that his followers, his sponsors, even his team wouldn't understand, that they only cared about seeing him on top, and that vulnerability would look like failure. That weight only grew heavier with every mile traveled and every new obligation added to his crowded schedule. It was a burden most people never even saw. Every brief moment of happiness was bookended by exhaustion and the gnawing fear that the show had to go on. The pieces fit together too perfectly. An exhausted traveler forever moving but never at rest, a risky last-minute flight, and one terrible twist of fate that changed everything in a single instant. And now, looking back, those who knew him best say they wish they'd reached out sooner. They wish they'd told him that the world could wait, that his happiness mattered more than any video. Because the tragedy was never just the accident itself, it was everything left unsaid. The silence after the crash was deafening, and it had a profound impact on Drew's millions of followers. Many had followed his adventures for years. They felt like they knew him personally. The thought of losing him was like losing a close friend, someone who had been a constant source of joy and inspiration in their lives. Tributes began to pour in from every corner of the internet, fan videos full of tearful testimonies, heartfelt messages packed with favorite memories, even entire murals painted in his honor. Communities sprang up overnight to support one another through the waiting, creating virtual vigils and lighting candles in cities all around the world. Online forums and chat groups buzzed with thoughts, prayers, and stories about the times Drew had made people smile or given them the courage to pursue their own dreams. What was most remarkable was the way Drew's story unified people from different countries, cultures, and backgrounds, just like his travels once had. It was as if the entire globe was collectively holding its breath, hoping for a miracle. Some people who had never interacted before found themselves connecting in these spaces, sharing their favorite Drew videos and the way he had changed their perspective on life. Even those who had never left their own hometowns could recall a moment when one of Drew's clips had sparked a sense of adventure or a new appreciation for the world outside their door. But even as the waves of support and love poured in, a sense of unease began to grow, gnawing at the edges of every tribute. No one could give them the one thing they craved most: real answers. Drew had spent his life telling stories about far-off places and unknown cultures. Now, for the first time, everyone was telling a story about him. The most painful part? It felt incomplete, like someone had reached the last chapter of a thrilling novel, only to discover that the final pages were missing. Rumors started to swirl, fueled by vague reports and uncertain updates, and conspiracy theories began to gain traction as days passed without concrete news. Still, his followers kept hoping, kept waiting, kept watching for any sign that might explain what happened. Drew had left them with countless cliffhangers before. They were used to waiting for the next episode of his grand adventures. But this time was different. This time, they weren't just awaiting the next installment. They were hoping for a resolution that might never come. And so they dug into every clue they could find, retraced his most recent steps, and scoured his past videos for hints that could help them understand. They weren't going to stop searching for the truth, for him. And they never would. Weeks turned into months with still no official word. And while mainstream interest gradually faded, his most devoted followers refused to let go. Every day, they returned to the same forums and discussion boards, refreshing pages and hoping that this would be the day someone posted a breakthrough. They dug into flight records, pieced together his last known location, and examined every photograph for hidden clues, spending countless hours zooming in, enhancing, and comparing every pixel for details most people would overlook. Online forums buzzed with every new theory, some plausible, grounded in facts and timelines, and others wildly speculative, straying into conspiracy territory. Some believed Drew was recovering in secret, choosing to disappear so he could focus on his health or find some peace. Others feared the worst, imagining darker scenarios that left them chilled. But they all shared one thing: a stubborn hope that kept them going, a belief that the story was unfinished, and that somehow Drew would come back. Even Drew's closest friends and colleagues, who had stayed respectfully quiet for so long, began to drop subtle hints that the story wasn't over. A reposted clip here, an emotional comment there, They never confirmed anything directly, but their breadcrumbs scattered carefully along the trail gave the most faithful followers a sense that more was going on than met the eye. Every tiny gesture was examined in endless threads and social posts, further feeding the intrigue and bolstering the community. This wasn't just an online sensation anymore. It had evolved into a tight-knit group fueled by resilience and empathy. People from all walks of life who had one thing in common: they weren't ready to give up. And as the mystery deepened, something even more important began to happen. The question was never just "where is Drew" anymore. It had become, how do we honor what he stood for? Fans began to share personal stories about how Drew had inspired them or helped them through their darkest times. Tribute videos started to surface. Local gatherings and virtual watch parties sprang up. Drew's absence, rather than pushing people away, pulled them closer together. They built connections with strangers who felt like lifelong friends, all bound by a shared admiration for someone who had unknowingly changed their lives. And as we near the end of this saga, when all the speculation and searching might finally give way to some real answers, there's one final revelation that will leave you breathless. One that will not only surprise you, but also remind you exactly why Drew mattered so much in the first place. And so, we come full circle, back to that mysterious day when a small plane took off into the morning light and never truly returned. The world held its breath as the hours ticked by into days, and those days slipped into weeks, all hoping for some kind of resolution. But officially, we may never have all the answers. Every theory, every question, every what if continues to swirl like mist through the clouds he once flew. The skies keep their secrets well, and sometimes, no matter how deeply we wish for clarity, some stories are left incomplete. Yet what we do have, and what we can hold on to, is the profound impact Drew Binsky had on millions of people across the globe. Even as speculation continues to surround his disappearance, his story reminds us that behind every bright smile on screen is a real human being with real struggles, fears, and dreams. Drew was more than an adventurer or a YouTuber. He was someone who invited the world to see the beauty in every corner of the earth. Wherever he went, whoever he spoke to, he had a way of making people feel heard and seen. That's what truly mattered. And that is why, regardless of what happened up there in the clouds that day, his story will never simply disappear. Every connection Drew created, every sense of wonder he reignited in so many hearts will never fade. Every viewer who felt like they traveled alongside him, stepping into unfamiliar cultures or learning something new about the world, carries a part of his spirit. Every heartfelt comment, every tribute video, every article asking, "Where is Drew Binsky?" proves just how deeply he mattered, and still matters, to those who followed his journey. And maybe that is the most powerful twist of all, that in telling the story of his tragedy, we also tell the story of his triumph. Drew Binsky didn't just visit the world, he embraced it, learned from it, and left his mark on it in countless ways. Even if this chapter feels unfinished, one thing is certain: his journey is far from over. The footprints he left across every continent live on in the memories of those who walked alongside him. And those who never met him still feel a powerful sense of connection, as if they were part of his world too.